Nikki Haley. Chris Christie. Tim Scott. Mike Pence. Asa Hutchinson. Ron DeSantis. Vivek Ramaswamy. Wait a minute. Doug Burgum. Okay, Governor, your first reaction.
My reaction is that these debates within your own party benefit the other side. No, seriously, I was disappointed. I thought that there were excellent presentations, but I am concerned with seeing to it that we have the strongest possible. The kind of candidate that will not only be able to articulate what we need as our goals to turn this country around, but also someone who is credible, not just because of experience, or I should put it the other way, not just because they are able to articulate many of the things that we agree with. I mean, I've seldom seen such unanimity of attitude. And it's in large measure because of the tragedy that we have had bringing that guy out of the basement. So we've got to, I don't know, I won't even predict, although the applause meter tonight was pretty clear. Ramaswamy won it, and the governor of Florida, I would say, was a strong second. But all of them actually, well, not all, but it was a heartening display of conviction and talent, and people who are clearly ready to, if given the opportunity, to bring us back on a road to the kind of America that we grew up in, at least that I grew up in, but hell, I'm the oldest one here. But we were all privileged, and our kids are not. They have not been given the education, either at home, which is where it begins, or in good schools where they are actually taught things, where they can do math. They can actually keep a checkbook, where they have learned that hard work is rewarded. And that is the America that won the respect and trust of the world. And it is why so many come to this country. I'm curious. Let me see by a show of hands, how many of you are the children or grandchildren of immigrants? Look around. Look around. Now, happily, that little poll is probably predictable because where are we? We're in the Nixon library and birthplace. So this is not a completely representative segment. And we are living in this state that has been run well, but not lately. But I think that the American people, by and large, are ready for a return to the kind of American that we were most of us here were privileged to grow up in. And it was an America of great opportunity for people willing to work, for people willing to raise a family, whether it was for an educational privileged or those who were, in fact, willing to work hard at a job that made them get up early, work all day, and then come home and still have enough energy to talk to their kids and tell them the truth about how lucky they are, how fortunate they are to have grown up in this nation above all others. That was the kind of family I was privileged to grow up in. At the dinner table, there was serious conversation, in addition to my father trying to be funny. But I will just say that it was an opportunity-rich environment for kids, whether they were the children of immigrants or the grandchildren of immigrants. Most of them had the great good fortune to learn some of the most important fundamentals of this country at the dinner table. And in too many families, we've lost that. Now, virtually everybody that was on that platform tonight was a good person. And they, I think, by and large, acquitted themselves well. Some were clearly more articulate. Some were more eager for the kind of an America that they could articulate was the one that they have grown up in. So I think that that's what we've got to return to. What really pleased me was it wasn't unanimity, but the big issues that were spoken of tonight, they were all pretty nearly the same. They were the same about the border. They were the same about a strong America, an America that is strong both in terms of its economy and in terms of its military might. And what we've lost is the trust that this president has caused, whether it was the absolutely unbelievable disgrace of the abandonment of American families and American Afghan allies whom we stranded in Afghanistan. That is unforgivable. But it's the same attitude that we have seen with this man who has been too busy to go to Lahaina, with this man who has defaulted on serious responsibility, and as a result, we don't have law and order, especially in the large blue cities. But I will tell you that I think we have the opportunity. We have got to change how this country has provided the opportunity unlike that any other. So we may not be of one mind, but we're pretty much the same. And thank you for being here tonight. We are blessed, truly blessed, by having had the privilege of growing up in this nation. And yes, I'm for a volunteer force, but first and foremost, I am for a strong America, strong in our schools, strong in our homes, strong on the field of battle. Because, you know, if we are strong on the field of battle, we will not invite the kind of weakness that tempted the Japanese and German warlords and cost us 440,000 American lives. Keep a strong America, and we will win and deserve to win the trust of our allies. Bless you all for being here.
So, Governor, the most lively exchanges seem to have occurred between 3 or 4 of the candidates who, obviously, I think we all can acknowledge who they were in terms of some of the livelier exchanges that occurred. And I'm asking, this is analysis, I'm just going to ask you to speculate on this, but the absence of former President Trump on the stage this evening, do you believe that his presence, if he had been there tonight, would have changed the dynamic of how that debate went this evening?
Yes.
How so?
Well, if you look back on recent history, you've seen that he dominated how many people were on the stage at one point there? Almost 16, I think. But it was.
I started here with candidates. When they began the level.
When they began,
candidates,
that's right.
Yep.
And he somewhat bullied the rest of them. And I think he tried to foreclose tonight by choosing to be at the same time with no time limits on him. It was clever. It was probably a pretty useful tactic. And he has got there's a certain irony here. The Democrats hope that they can repeat the last election, hope that they can keep Biden in the basement, and rely upon the media that are clearly biased on his side. And it was a strategy that worked. And it worked in large measure because, among other things, our schools have really cheated the American youth, certainly in this state. Why has California suddenly gone over? But it hasn't been. It has been sudden. Stop and think about it. I left my successor as governor with a surplus that was about the same size as the deficit that I inherited. And it didn't take long for us to get back into the kind of spending and the kind of loss of confidence in law and order that has occurred since then. So I think that the American people are definitely ready for a change back to where they could be safe in their homes, in their parks, in their places of work. They could be confident that there would be someone seeking ways to increase employment, seeking ways to attract new industry, because that's what we had to do in the 90s, and we accomplished it. But we had tonight, most of the people on the stage tonight would subscribe to what turned this state around. And I think the American people will subscribe to it. And I think that if Trump had been on the stage tonight, it would have been less of an opportunity for the other people on the stage. But he tried it another way. He tried to be, if not on the stage with them, in a way that he could detract attention from them. And it'll be interesting to see when the polling is published tomorrow what the difference was in terms of the audience for the debate tonight and the interview by Tucker Carter of Donald Trump. I don't know how that will come out, but what I do know is that it was an opportunity for him to diminish the attention of the public away from other candidates. And I think the polling will reflect that.
Is there anyone that you saw there on the stage this evening that surprised you, pleasantly surprised you, and you now see in a different light as a result of this debate this evening? Anyone stand out?
Well, not so much as a surprise, except I have, with I think many others, as the applause reflected tonight, were taken by the clarity and strength of a very articulate Ramaswamy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the applause also indicated a strong support for the governor of Florida. And I would have to say that I am enthused, frankly, about several other candidates who would, I think, all be able to beat a fair fight. And by a fair fight, I mean one where we can compel Biden to come out. I'm not sure he's going to make it to the finish line. And there's not going to be any great enthusiasm for the current vice president. I mean, she's running 10 points below him.
Mm-hmm.
So I have great enthusiasm for several of the candidates. I thought Nikki Haley was not only spirited, but articulate and making good sense. She was the first woman to be governor of South Carolina, and the old boys there who sort of tolerated her in the legislature were shocked when she beat the established candidate. I'm an enthusiastic fan of Tim Scott. I think he is terrific. He is someone who has great credibility. He's got a great story. His grandfather, his mother raised him, and they said, you work, you earn it, and you will find the way to a better life than we have had. And they meant it, and he took it to heart. I think he's terrific. There were very impressive people on that stage tonight. And so what we've got to do on a national level is not suffer what we have in California. Why was there such a change in such a short period of time? Well, I'm going to oversimplify it slightly. Not a whole lot. But there have been two major factors. The first is that our public school system, which in this state 40 years ago was probably the best public school system in the nation, has become one of the very worst. And why? It is because the people who made it the best school system in the nation were the teachers who said our California Teachers Association exists for one purpose, and that is to enhance the quality of classroom instruction. And they did. Hell, this was long ago, so that they endorsed me, knowing that I felt as they did, that it was the best public school system in the nation because of the fact that they were great classroom teachers. Today, we do not have that same standard. We just don't. We've gone from having the best public school system in the nation to one of the worst. And it breaks my heart to say that, because the kids that we're graduating are not stupid, but they are ignorant, and it is not their fault. And that we've got to turn around. And one of the common themes tonight was that theme. We have got to turn it around by seeing that they are educated. They're not getting a decent education.
I know we're going to go to questions from the audience, but I want to close this segment on this question. So to your point, and a segue from that which you're describing, numerous references were made during the debate about identity crisis, a nation in decline was repeated, America's in decline several times. What do you say to young people, I mean, with all of the experience you've had in public service at the federal, state, city level as mayor of San Diego? What do you say to a young person today when it comes to words of encouragement, to not become dismayed or fret over the conditions? What's that message that we need to convey to be able to, and should be a message of these candidates to young people so that they can continue to maintain hope and fulfill their aspirations?
Well, I think that there's no shortage of ambition on the part of the kids today whom we are graduating. I think that what we have got to do is to hearten them, that we need to challenge them in a way that they haven't been challenged. And I think that we have got to see to it that they, and we've got to raise some hell in California, because let's look at what has happened. We've seen in a very brief period of time, we have seen this state dominated by public employee unions, the largest and the most powerful of which is the richest, and that's the teachers' union. And when I say they are ignorant and it's not their fault, that's why. And the other thing is that the teachers' union today is the biggest, the richest of all of the public employee unions. And they make no bones about it. They are for the Democratic Party. They are for the type of educational system that does not overtax them, and I don't mean in a financial sense. But they have to learn that, and we are going to have to teach them that. And the other thing is that at one time, when Richard Nixon was one of the first to give it voice, when he made the famous comment that you won't have Nixon to kick around anymore. It was because in the same speech he said to Ralph Greenberg, who was then the publisher, one of two political writers for the LA Times, he commended Ralph Greenberg because he was of the old school. He said, he recited the facts in his columns. The other guy was in bed with all of the public employee unions, and in particular, understood the huge financial cushion that was given by the teachers union. And what did they discuss in their own meetings, and what positions did they take? Rarely did they take positions that in any way affected the quality of education. And they certainly were ignorant of their history of what we used to call civics. So they are today not nearly as well educated in many respects. And they're certainly not prepared to make informed decisions, not their fault, because they're not being informed.
With that, Chris, turn it over to you for the...
Mr. Ambassador, Mr. Governor, thank you very much for your analysis. We are incredibly tight on time, ladies and gentlemen. So we're going to take one question from the audience, and then I've got to get the governor and the ambassador out of here. And that question will come right now.
Wow, I feel privileged. Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you for being here. My name is Gene Hernandez, and I happen to be the mayor of this beautiful city, and a conservative city, by the way. I found this very...
Can I just interrupt and just say that...
Oh, boy.
The mayor and I served as police officers in the city of Orange much younger years when we were much younger.
Yes, we did.
Good for you. Good for you.
I found this debate very enlightening on a number of levels. One, it's clear that they had listened to their consultants and said, okay, you're behind in the polls, here's who you got to take out. So they went like a heat-seeking missile to take... What it really did was elevate who they feared, number one. But two, what did you think of the quality of the questions? It seems like we really want to find out more about these candidates. Asking about UFOs, come on. It just seemed that they weren't really made or crafted to bring out the best that we can find about who these people really are. What are their policy thoughts? That's what I really wanted to hear. It was more like a dogfight. I get it. You try to take out your opponent. But the reality is, I also need to hear you, and what are you going to bring to the table? Why would I vote for you? What are your thoughts on that?
I'll just give you my reaction, because frankly, I was thinking about that driving here tonight, and whether or not these debates on television are still attractive to a viewing audience. And I ask that question because these days there are so many sources of information that you can draw from, that you can listen to audio, you can see video, you can read articles, you can see columns, you can see analysis, and just think of all the time that was spent, and that's why I posed a question to the governor about the former president being on stage or not on stage. That subject has been debated now for the last 8 or 9 days, nonstop, 24/7. The suspense that was built up during the course of all of that conversation was just amazing. So a lot of these debates, and I've been to many over the years, presidential debates, and I've always been intrigued by what goes on behind the scenes, and what it is, it's become, in my opinion, it is built for television, for a television viewing audience. And so consequently, questions are posed, are succinct, and to some degree, let's admit it here, some of the drama that took place tonight, the exchanges that got a little bit heated back and forth between one particularly young candidate and some of the others, has to some degree some entertainment value for people. Some people are amused by seeing that on stage, and so I think it's hard to predict, and a lot of speculation goes into how you package the presentation so that it keeps the audience intact and interested. But at the end of the day, this is the American presidency we're talking about, the most important civic decision that we make as citizens of the United States is to focus on who we elect to be the next president of the United States. Governor, I don't know if you want to add to that.
I think you've put it very well. And I was less surprised than disappointed because of exactly what you've said. It becomes a show. And a good debate, I mean, a Lincoln-Douglas debate, that informs people. There are a lot of people that don't want to be that well informed, and they don't, many of them don't vote. And maybe it's just as well they don't. There are some countries in which if you don't vote, you're fined. I think that's a lousy idea. I don't want to have to bribe people to vote. They should be voting for their families and for their children and for the kind of future that they want for their children. And when Tim Scott tonight made the comment about being able to live in a country where you can have valid ambitions, valid hopes that your dreams can come true, that's the kind of an America that built this country. And it started a century ago. It started even earlier than that. But I mean, it's extraordinary. No other country has produced the kind of environment that not only tolerated ambition, but encouraged it. That's why we have so many people who, from very humble beginnings, have become leaders in this country. It can happen in one generation. And thank God it can, because that's what's made us the strongest and the most trusted. One of the things that is tragic is that we have had a president who caused grave doubts among the rest of the free world as to our strength and our resolve. That is a dangerous situation. That and military weakness that attracted people into the lull of the 30s. When Churchill said, in answer to a question by a reporter, if you had only one word to describe World War II, what would it be? Churchill replied, the unnecessary war. And he was right. Because if we had been at the strength that we were, or even half of it, of what we actually had to feel once the war was our war, it made all the difference in the world. But instead, when the Brits had finally awakened to the fact that they were way, way behind, we were ranked 18th in the world, right behind Romania, in terms of our military capability. It was inevitable that we would wind up in the war, and FDR, I think, was smart enough to see that, but he waited a very long time because it wasn't popular. And it wound up costing 440,000 American lives. Young American lives, people who never could have families. And that's a tragedy that we dare not repeat.
Absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, Governor Pete Wilson.
Governor, thank you for joining us on your birthday, no less. Happy birthday.
Mr. Ambassador, thank you for being here, and ladies and gentlemen, thanks to you the most. We will be back in this room on September the 27th and for the second debate, and we will see you all then. Thank you. Get home safe.